Hey there, it's Matt Green. Welcome to our Real Insights Live event today. It is October 6th, 2017. I'm super excited to have our guest, Craig Goodliff, where we're going to speak about all things virtual assistants. Before we jump into that, though, I do have a couple of announcements and reminders. We have some really great upcoming events going on with our Keller Williams training. So first is Business by the Book in Salt Lake with Holly Prescott on October 25th. So that's coming up just around the corner. It's going to be exceptional, talking about the MREA book and the One Thing book. And then we have the Business Planning Clinic, which I'm actually teaching on November 6th in St. George, and then again in November 8th in Salt Lake. So we'll be sure to include the notes and links to those events in our show notes. And in the post as well, so that you can check that out and participate. We'd really encourage that. It's a great time of year to be setting your goals. And then certainly, if you're not currently following me on Facebook, please, I'd love to have you do that. You can find me at facebook.com/Matt Green Utah, and like our Keller Williams Facebook page at facebook.com/KW Utah. We have a number of really great events coming up with interviews on social media. A really talented guy who flips a ton of homes here in Utah that we'll be interviewing. So just a lot of really good stuff coming up. If you're enjoying the interview today, please give us a thumbs up. And certainly if you have questions for our guest, Craig, about virtual assistants, certainly post those in the comments below. And we're going to do our best to address those today near the end of our interview. So with that being said, just really excited to have our guest, Craig Goodliff, on our call today. Craig, welcome to the call.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
So, Craig, I've had really just an honor and privilege of being in business with you now for a number of years, and have known you and really just enjoyed seeing you grow your business in a pretty extraordinary way over the last handful of years. And if you don't mind, maybe just share with our group a little bit about your career path and a little bit about what kind of production you and your team are doing currently.
All right. I appreciate it. So thanks. So career path, I've been at Keller Williams since I was a kid. I was 22 years old when I got here. And I kind of grew up in Keller Williams in real estate and got together with a gentleman in the office. His name's Kevin Richter, back in 2011. We kind of had this idea, this concept, hire these virtual assistants, because I was already doing it. I had someone say, we're a virtual assistant and worked from home just a city away, someone outside the office. We had these really powerful mastermind groups. So about 2012, we opened up halfway through the year, the Good Life Group, where so far this year, we're one sale away. I'm excited to going ahead and breaking through $1 million GCI. Wow. So it's a new milestone for the team. We're pretty excited about that. Our entire administrative team is virtual. We have no in-office admin whatsoever. So for a lot of people, that's a little bit of a different concept. And then through the process, I became a Keller Williams MAPS coach, which I coach real estate agents from all over North America. And I also have a wonderful group coaching called Virtual Leverage, where we go really in depth to exactly what we're talking about today. So I'm excited to share it with everyone. And in addition to that, because I am a little crazy, I've got a couple little offshoot virtual assistant companies. One of them posts ads on KSL called Team in a Box, and we help promote listings, and we delete and repost more frequently than KSL would like us to, but it makes our phone ring, buyers and listings calling. We love it. It's great. And it's all virtual assistants. So we've been really honored and really blessed to be a part of the Keller Williams Utah culture.
Wow, it's so cool. Yeah, and it's been really impressive to watch, and just the growth of your team has been really incredible. So yeah, I love the fact that, and really, you're so valid in this topic, especially because you have built not only a really significant business here in Utah, sales team business with virtual assistants supporting you in the admin side, but a handful of other businesses that are, largely based with these virtual assistants, which is just really fun to talk with someone that not only coaches on it, but does it, practical experience. You've got such great insight into it. So if you don't mind, for a lot of people, this concept still, although maybe some of us have heard the term virtual assistant, what is a virtual assistant? How do you define this concept?
So it's kind of a funny thing, Matt. I originally started with a virtual assistant I didn't even know. We were in a situation where we simply didn't have office space, and we needed an assistant. So we hired someone who had to work from home because we didn't have room to put them. So we didn't know that at that time we had a virtual assistant. They just lived a couple cities over, and we were able to make it work. And that was back in the day when there were fax machines, and we did a lot of that and scanning, and sometimes we had to drop files off. So virtual assistant, though, is simply someone who works outside of the office. Plain and simple.
Outside of the office, but they're getting
Mm-hmm.
things done, and in many cases, people that are interacting with your team have no idea that that person's not just sitting in the office next to you, assisting you and getting things done, right?
Right. In fact, you gave me some great advice several years ago, and you asked a question in a mastermind that was, when do you have your assistant start answering your phone? And I sent our virtual assistant, Tina, at that time, who had worked for a cell phone company answering their phones, which sometimes, they're not in the US. I said, hey, can you answer my phone? Can we set that up? So she answers my mobile phone now. In fact, it's kind of funny because I got one of my good friends. He said, hey, it sounds like you've got people in the US answering your phone right now. And I said, no, I just simply hired people with better accents. So kind of funny.
That's awesome. So if you think about, like, what are some of the reasons, or if you're talking to someone and really helping them think through this, what are some of the reasons someone might elect to hire a virtual assistant rather than just a local worker?
So I had a coach who challenged me several years ago to bring down my budget and start cutting my expenses because I was paying an assistant simply when the market had shifted, I couldn't afford. And we were looking for other solutions and things like that. And that's when this whole concept came into my mind. So obviously cost and budget is one of the most critical things because different people living in different places of the world make a different amount of money. And the way that it translates, what's not a lot for us is a lot of money for someone else. So that's one of the big things. Also the space issue, because even now, I just prefer being in my own office. Call me selfish. I wouldn't want someone in here all day with me, yet for what I do, I love to have someone listening in, holding me accountable and keeping me on my to-do list. So especially when you're doing something mundane like building a presentation, it's easy to have someone watch your screen and say, hey, get off Facebook and come right back here. You got a PowerPoint to build.
Interesting.
So simple things like that.
Yeah. So you talk a little bit about cost, and certainly not having to provide office space for a virtual assistant is a huge cost savings. And then you reference a little bit about, having other people in other parts of the world, a foreigner essentially acting as a virtual assistant, and that there's some cost savings relative to that. What kind of, hourly rates are you paying for support when it's a foreigner a virtual assistant that's out of the country?
So let me just give you some context, because most of who we hire is from the Philippines. So if you look, you can hire a virtual assistant from the US, and the average price to do that's about $4,000 a month. In the UK, it's $3,360 a month. These are full-time. Mexico, $960 a month. We look at Romania, there's a Romanian virtual assistant, $2,240. India is averaging $800 a month for a virtual assistant. Australia, if you want someone with that really cool Australian accent, it's going to cost you $5,600 a month. That's actually more than the US. In the Philippines, which is typically where most of in fact, everyone we hire is from, runs around $400 a month. And in fact, the most popular job in the Philippines for a lot of people is nurse. And if you're a nurse in the Philippines, the most popular job pays $1.25 an hour, which is not a lot of money for us. And that's what they make over there. In fact, the average person in their country makes right around $3,700 per year. That's US.
Whoa. Yeah. But in relationship to their economy, that's a good living, right?
Oh, it's amazing.
So it's interesting. I mean, that's obviously a huge cost savings relative to and that's a full-time position. But maybe speak a little bit about the qualifications of these people that are acting as your virtual assistant. Are these people with high school, degrees or college degrees? What's their qualifications? What level of talent are you engaging with?
It's kind of funny that a lot of the people who work for us, and I joke around about this, but they're more educated in school than I am. I mean, I'm okay saying I went to school for computer science and I didn't love it, and I dropped out and got into real estate, and luckily it worked out. A lot of the people that work for us actually have bachelor's degrees, or at least an associate's degrees, and most of them have gone to college and they have graduated successfully, and they're actually highly intelligent. Wow. So a lot of them, they've graduated. They have degrees in nursing. I mean, people who work for us. We've got someone who works for us. Our first virtual assistant ever, Daphne. She's got her bachelor's degree, and she was a lab tech prior to being a virtual assistant and posting ads online. And she's been with us just about 5 years now and just loves it.
Wow. And how much are you paying that person or a
So
person like
typically
that?
typically when we hire a virtual assistant, we start them off at $2 an hour.
Wow.
So that's what we're paying to start with, and we'll increase them. We'll go, $2.50, $3 an hour. And some people, I mean, we're paying them a little bit more money. They're making, more than double that. Some people, with their bonuses and everything else, because some of our companies like Team in a Box, we love to have sales and we bonus them on sales. They'll make close to $10,000-$15,000 this year, which in their country is actually more than what an attorney makes on average.
Wow. Interesting. So what about hours? I mean, do you really have to commit to a
Mm.
full-time person with a virtual assistant, or can you really structure just about any type of, hourly period per week that you want? Is there a lot of flexibility in that?
So there's a couple different ways to do it. There are freelancers, and what they do is they take on a bunch of clients, and they'll stay very task specific usually. And you'll pay a freelancer who they'll go and maybe work with 3 or 4 different people. And you can do that. If I were starting today and I didn't necessarily have the budget, I might hire a freelancer. In fact, when we're building websites or we're doing any kind of graphic design or things like that, I'll hire a freelancer temporarily who I know they're working for 4 or 5 other people, but that's okay. I'm paying them for a result. At the same time, we have looked at people who they just want to work part-time, this one job working online. And a lot of times we've seen that not work because they don't necessarily make enough money to take care of themselves. So they'll go find a second job working online, and they'll work their guts out. We had someone like that, and their other job moved them to full-time. We had them on part-time, and they were falling asleep while working with us. Well, we're part-time, not paying them as much. So they quit and left. And it was really sad because we lost a really high-level person that was true talent. So we learned the hard way. But
Interesting.
yeah.
So as it relates to that, I mean, one of the things I've been so impressed in my conversations with you is that I always thought that there was really kind of a limited scope of things that a virtual assistant could potentially do. But like, it seems like it's pretty expansive when you start to get creative and really think outside the box and recognize how talented these people are that you're engaging with, whether it be overseas or locally. And now with technology, I mean, it's kind of a broad spectrum of things that they could potentially do for you in business. Would you mind just kind of, sharing a bunch of ideas on things that you've learned that they're providing value for you that maybe you hadn't thought about previously when you first started?
Oh, yeah. So some of the simple things, I'm going to tell you, I have this kind of thing with sales that I know I should build a database, and I'm terrible at it. I know a lot of salespeople, especially in real estate, have a hard time. One of the simple things is going through and building out your database, going and finding your past clients, their birthdays, things like that, and putting together your marketing campaigns and strategies. In fact, a lot of them are Google savvy. So when you say, build me a 33 touch campaign, they go Google what that is, they'll get some content and they'll build it out for you. And we've had people who they've built our websites, different platforms there. Plus I mentioned answering the phone. We've had people answer the phone, manage social media, post ads on classified sites. We've had people that they'll prepare reports. So when we look at any given area in real estate and we kind of want to know what's the population like, a lot of research tasks. Like we know right now that in the state of Utah, there are 24,139 licensed people. We know last year only in the last 12 months, 44,989 sold according to our MLS. We know exactly how many homes the average real estate agent's selling, and that was all taken care of and figured out to us by a virtual assistant. In fact, sometimes they're coming to us saying, hey, I've got an idea. Could this benefit the business, or would you like this data or information? And then other times I've had friends come to me that say, hey, I need someone to handle my scheduling, and they're not even in real estate. Could a virtual assistant help me with that? And oh, absolutely, having someone else handle your scheduling. Everything from, I'm going to share something embarrassing, but I had my virtual assistant today call and book me a dentist appointment. So just because I could. I mean, we've had them to where they book dinner for us. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. My wife and me were celebrating our anniversary. So I said to Sheena, one of our great virtual assistants, and my wife likes to eat clean. She's really paleo. And I said, can you call around, find us a nice place, get us a reservation? And she called around. Now, there's a culture difference. I didn't specify a lot. And she says, I found a place. They offer a paleo menu. They can cook you chicken and vegetables, and they can just keep it really clean. It's supposed to be really nice. It got great reviews online. I says, great, Sheena. Did you get us a reservation? And she says, no, you don't need one. I says, great. What's the name of this place? She said, it's Denny's. So We have had that happen, and there's times that I've had them book travel for me, like flights and hotels, and believe it or not, they didn't know the difference, and I've stayed in some questionable hotels, not on purpose, but I was up for the adventure, so I did that, and things like that.
But that's really just a
come up
matter of
with.
coaching, though, right? Because ultimately,
Oh
like I've
yeah,
heard
yeah.
huge success stories with that as well. Like that's a really great use of their time is or great leverage for a lot of people, whether it's
Oh
scheduling
yeah.
or trip planning or whatever. That those are just things that can take so much of a professional's time that we could easily outsource. Some of the other ones that I've heard people have really good success is like bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
So handling the financials for a bookkeeper. And the other one that I sometimes remember or fail to remember is that they can get things done because they're working in our nighttime, right? So while we're sleeping, you can offload a whole pile of tasks to do, and they're getting them done through our night. And you wake up the next morning, and it's just like, well, here we go.
Yeah, yeah. With most of our people, they work graveyard, so they'll start work at some of them start work at 11 o'clock at night or 3 a.m. So we have had people though that work overnight for us, and that's always handy when you go to bed and say, "Oh my gosh, I need this report," and you just send it out there, wake up, and there it is, magically in your email.
Yeah, very cool. And I know, I mean, one of the things I've experienced with you is you no longer answer your phone, literally. And anytime someone
Yeah.
calls you, someone, it's actually very professional reception when they answer the phone, but this person's actually in the Philippines. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
And
My
in most
mom hates
cases, you
it.
just wouldn't know. That's good. I'm sure she appreciates the fact that you're forwarding her calls straight to someone in the Philippines.
Well, she
That's
tries to
awesome.
get a hold of me, and some people I mess with, and their native language, Tagalog or Bisaya, depending on what they're speaking, I'll have them go and just start speaking that language. My mom finds it very annoying. So sorry, Mom, but I like having fun with you. So keeps
That's
you
great.
young.
So what are some of the other issues that need to be considered when working with a virtual assistant? What are some of those things that maybe, someone stepping into this first time really probably hasn't thought about up front?
So turnover is probably the biggest enemy of virtual assistants right now, because we know that on average, and this is a big average, we've had people with us close to 5 years. I mean, we had someone that came and they didn't make it through their first 90 days, and we let them go a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, it just wasn't a fit. But turnover is the biggest enemy of any time you have true talent like that, and being able to keep them is a big thing. And then making sure you hired the right person, obviously. So turnover. In your first little bit, you've got to be willing to part ways with them. And before you hire them in the first place, do a little bit of research on them and be diligent, because I've seen people put that I'm a financial strategist, and you start getting into them and they have no clue on how to even use Excel. And we've had that. We've had situations with that. So you'll have people that say, I'm great at building websites. And you're like, cool, you're hired, ready to build a website. Then you find out they've never built a website before, and they're expecting you to train them to build a website. So those are some of the challenges. And then also just, this is going to sound dumb, but I made this mistake, going on Facebook after they apply to work for you and just looking at their Facebook feed. Because believe it or not, they're going to post some stuff and you're going to say, okay, well, you're into some questionable activity. I'm probably not going to hire you. But it's those things, not doing your due diligence up front, tends to lead to turnover. And there's a lot of people that they didn't do that, or they didn't set clear expectations, and the great person they hired quit. Some people, they get surprised when you tell them, okay, I expect you to work a graveyard shift. It's 11 o'clock at night and you're going to get off work somewhere around 6 a.m. And some people can't do that. In fact, some people, they just, hey, you know what? I want to make the money, but I can't stay up all night.
So what I've heard so far is nothing different than really hiring someone locally. I mean, in reality, right? Those are all things that we face in hiring, someone right here in our own backyard. And I've had a number of experiences where I've had candidates tell me, oh yeah, I'm phenomenal at Excel, for example. And then when we really dig into it, the last time they had any training or used Excel was like 10 years ago. And of course, in today's world, that's like eons ago. Really, the background checks, that whole career visioning process that we use as a company with Keller Williams, that hiring process, that checking of references, really exploring what and validating what they claim they can do sounds like in order to have success in the virtual assistant space, you've got to have that same level of effort in your hiring process. And then the same kind of thing goes for those first 90 days, setting clear expectations, having a clear job description, those kinds of things. And maybe you can tell me, but is it even, magnified in the virtual space because you don't have the ability to sit down across the table from that person? So you've really even got to go that much deeper in that career visioning process?
Yeah, and you got to go deeper in the looking for candidates process, because if you're choosing from a pool of maybe 3 people, you're choosing wrong. So one of my best people, Raquel, when we were looking for her to fill her position, we went through 121 applicants.
Wow.
And then we hired someone else, our lead manager, Hannah. It took 5 weeks. We were over 300 candidates. We were looking for someone who was specifically trained in specific CRMs and that could build out systems that we simply didn't have. So it was in the career visioning, it was in the upfront, it was in the diligence, and really it comes down to being able to get a lot of candidates. Because if you I went on Craigslist, I found someone in Manila and I hired them. That's not the best way to do it. I mean, you wouldn't hire the same first person that walked into your office saying, "Hey, I want to be your executive assistant."
Right. Well, and I'll bet, knowing you, that you've probably got a virtual assistant doing a lot of the high level screening, right? Validating a lot of the education and those kinds of things. Is that accurate?
Yeah, believe it or not, Matt, I had this idea that someone in the Philippines could probably do a better job of finding talent in the Philippines than I could.
Of course.
Sounds obvious. And it took me years to have that, oh, okay, great. So Sheena, who was my assistant for a lot of years, who set up the interviews for me, she validated we used the disc for a long time, and there's an old AVA thing we used to use before the KPA. She did a lot of that work. And then I looked at her resume and remembered that before working for me, she had a background in HR. So it was kind of just a really easy process to say, hey, guess what? You're probably overqualified for this and you're going to do it. And by the way, we have less turnover putting her in charge of it than me. So it was the right hire. She's better than me on my best day finding talent.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk a little bit about, so there's probably things I think that fall outside the normal scope of the hiring process and the normal challenges with hiring and retaining and training talent and setting expectations. And a couple of the ideas or thoughts that I had that I wanted to ask you were cultural issues, for example. Like, that's not as big an issue in our hiring process here locally. So is that something that you have to be aware of, and how do you address that?
Oh yeah, even holidays are different. So there's other days they're expecting off or to have that day off, and you're saying, that's a work day, and different things like that. Also, culturally, it's hard for their family members to understand, okay, so you're going to work all night, sleep part of the day, and still be able to do that. I mean, even in the US, I don't think I could handle that. That'd be a little bit tougher. And then some of the other cultural things.
Those are like your virtual assistants that you expect to be available during our working hours. Those are people in the Philippines that are working during the night so that they can be available to support you during our working day, right?
Yes. Got it. So that, and then just little words. I've worked on learning Tagalog. I'm terrible, which is the main language over in the Philippines. Some of the wording and stuff like that, words mean different things. Through Google Translate and stuff like that, you can still get it wrong. So I was working on a word earlier this week that was BAH, and I'm not even going to guess how to pronounce it. Apparently it means babe, and I kept calling my assistants babe, and I felt really guilty after. So culturally, I went, well, do you guys type it to each other? And they're like, nah, you don't understand. It's a term of endearment. That's like you called us all your girlfriend. So
did you get a call from your HR person?
No, I didn't. Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So little things like that, and then just the food is totally different.
Yeah.
So getting to know, like when they talk about the things they eat, and being able to engage and have like a conversation with them, even culturally.
So just relating with them, just having that relationship where you relate with them and develop a relationship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, going over to the Philippines, I found out something when I was in the airport there. They don't always have toilet paper at most of those restrooms you go into. And that's kind of bad. That's a cultural difference that I just wasn't prepared for.
Bring your own paper.
So, that's a whole other awesome story altogether.
So tell, maybe or share some of your experiences relative to the language, because I know, like, one of the biggest frustrations that a lot of people have in dealing with customer support here in the country is when they get someone on the phone that they can barely understand their accent in India or something like that. And they just get so frustrated. So when you're working with other real estate agents or buyer and seller, and they're speaking with one of your virtual assistants, are you getting a lot of feedback from agents and clients about frustrations and the language barrier?
We had for a long time. I'm just going to tell you, it was a challenge until we figured out some of our best people that work for us have call center experience. They've worked in a call center. So we've noticed that if they've been in a call center 2 or 3 years, they understand customer service. They know how to talk to us. They're trained on it. So we have a lot less problems when they've worked in an area like that. And so when they go ahead and come in, they're used to dealing with Americans, but that are sometimes unhappy. And they're really good at diffusing situations. When they've talked to enough people, their accents are good. When you have someone, though, and we had one lady that we hired, she lived in Michigan for a little while, and her accent, and brilliant, very, very smart woman. Her accent was so thick, though, we couldn't put her on the phone with anyone, unfortunately. And that was one of the reasons we weren't able to keep her. It's just, you have a hard time working with someone that you can't call, and when you do, you can't understand.
Yeah, but on the converse side, I know my experience in speaking with some of your virtual assistants and some of the stories I've heard from you, that their English and accent is well enough, like it's legit enough, that in many cases we weren't aware that that person we were speaking to was in the Philippines. I know that you've had examples where you've had people actually drop into the office to meet so-and-so who they're dealing with from your office, to find out that that person doesn't work in your office, that they're on the other side of the world.
We had that with a mortgage person who we were on the listing side, and he came into the office because he was so excited to meet Tina and wondered how come he hadn't met Tina. So he was surprised when he got up here that Tina doesn't work in this office, and he was wondering where she's at. We even had someone that he came and brought in his earnest money, and he talked to Tina, he talked to us, and I said, "Who are you here to see to drop it off to?" He said, "Tina." And I went, "Did Tina tell you that?" And he said, "Oh, no, I guess I just assumed." Went, "Well, she's in the Philippines." And he said, "Oh, is she on a trip?" So, no, Tina's not on a trip. In fact, we had a career night.
Trip.
We had a career night last night here at the Market Center. We had 19 people show up, and some of them were disappointed they didn't get to meet Sheena, who's been so nice and helpful through text message and phone calls and emails, getting them here.
Yeah, very cool. So really, it's a matter then just expanding your pool and realizing if this is something that I'm expecting from my virtual assistant, if they're actually going to engage with my clients or need to speak with people here locally, then that's one of the other check boxes I need to check off. I need to make sure that their ability to communicate in a way that is efficient here with other people that we do business with is strong enough. So just part of the recruiting process.
And their tech, because their technology, because here's something we found, that they sound better when they're on a really great internet connection, when they've got more than 5 megabits per second. If you're on a 1 or 2 gig and you're calling that person, because we have it to where pretty much everyone has a phone number and they can call and text, and we can call them right now. And if you have a client calling and texting and they have a low connection, the client and the virtual assistant are getting a little frustrated. And I've noticed, and I don't know what it is, but when there's a little bit of frustration with any of our virtual assistants, their accent gets a little stronger. So
yeah, I can appreciate that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh yeah.
So part of that hiring and recruiting process has to be validating that they're either in part of the country or they personally have a strong enough internet connection in their house or wherever they're working to really facilitate those kinds of conversations. And
we require that they have typically 2. Primary and a backup connection.
Got it.
So, and it might be I have my house internet and then I've also got my phone.
Awesome. So I know that there's a lot of vendors, or not a lot, but a handful of vendors that are pretty prominent in our industry and generally in businesses that are outselling the service of helping you find and kind of engaging a virtual assistant. My Outdesk, for example, I know there's others. What's the pros and cons of working with a company, a vendor like that versus just, finding talent and hiring, directly with someone that could work for you as a virtual assistant versus going through one of these vendor programs?
So I love, there's a lot of great vendor programs. The thing they have that most people don't is they've got the database of talent to begin with, people that are wanting to work online. And they've done a lot of the primary interview process, the vetting, stuff like that, so you don't have to do it. So if I needed a virtual assistant, I had absolutely no time. That's probably the fastest way you can go. And you're going to pay for it, of course. I mean, you pay more per hour when you go that route. But you've got someone who you're going to go through less interviews. There's less training. There still is training, and they don't always hire perfectly. I mean, no one does. So you're going to have that, and you are going to pay for it. With us, I went ahead and just said, I'm not going to go through a third-party company. I'm going to figure it out myself. And you go through more talent, and you've got to get really strategic on the way that you put them into a database. And really, if I'm being honest, we started building the database because I was interviewing the same people twice. And I went, I got to keep a record so I don't interview the same people twice. Well, realized later I have a database, and I could contact those people and say, hey, who do you know that fits this job description? So the biggest advantage is that. And then training, you're still going to have to train your virtual assistant. They might be trained on some basics, but there's still going to be a little bit of training that's involved. And then one of the other benefits the big companies have is if I'm looking for someone to do something like a podcast manager or podcast editor, they've got people they know are trained in that. And so some of those niche positions, they have those people where it might take you, substantially more time and effort to find someone like that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be based on what your budget allows too.
Budget, time, right? So instead of all the time and doing a lot of the precursor work and validating a lot of these things, they take a lot of that off your plate. And instead of paying $2 to $6 an hour, you might be paying $4 to $10 an hour, or $4 to $8 an hour. Is that kind of an accurate assessment?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it.
It's interesting though. I mean, it's a really good point that might be a great way to see if this is a right fit for you. I know when I first started doing pay-per-click type stuff in lead generation, I started out with a company that did it for me, and it cost 3 times what it cost me to do now. But I really wanted to just kind of explore, get my feet wet, see if it was the right fit for me from a lead generation standpoint. And then during that time, even though I was paying a significant amount of money, I was learning how to do it myself. And then ultimately I turned off that vendor relationship, did it myself. And for a third of the price was generating the same number of leads, but it was a great way for me to get my feet wet. And it sounds like, that might be an option for people if they wanted to explore that.
Oh yeah. If I wanted someone today and I was new to this, that's exactly the route I would take.
Yeah. Interesting. Good. So do clients, I've heard this come up a couple of times, but do clients or colleagues ever give you a hard time about giving work to someone overseas? Like, the whole kind of mindset around taking jobs out of America. Do people give you a hard time about that?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things that we all get frustrated when we dial in to anywhere and we get transferred to a foreign country and we feel like the person can't help us. And I mean, really over anything else, that's probably the biggest frustration we experience. So when we have clients or colleagues that they have that, we know the people we hire, they've got to be so phenomenal that when they interact with them, that they're going to feel, wow, this is a great person. And I feel pretty good about it. But on the surface, yeah, you do have that challenge and you do have that problem. However, through hiring other agents and stuff like that, we've actually been able to create more opportunities and jobs for people in the real estate world. So, and then it's also, not a lot of people want to go ahead and start posting ads on like Craigslist at 5 o'clock at night when that's when buyers are looking. I mean, most people either want to be off work or they're out showing houses or they're on a presentation. So it's been one of those great jobs that we're able to do.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
And then also the opportunity to give back. I mean, there's a lot of people in their country that they don't have a job and they have nowhere to go to get a job. And so they might say you're taking jobs out of, the United States, which I'm not going to lie, we are. We're though able to hire more people and do more and give back more to people who really need it, who have no hope. I mean, we're blessed with so many opportunities here in the States that we just have to take advantage of them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I mean, in reality too, I think you're exporting lower paying jobs to some extent, but in doing so, you're creating more opportunities for higher paying jobs. There's people on your team that wouldn't be on your team if you didn't have the ability to get some of these other things done at the cost that you do, I think. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you're
customer
creating more
service
opportunities.
Is critical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And a better overall client experience because they know when they call in at 8 o'clock at night and someone's sitting out in front of their house and they call, which is my cell phone number, someone's going to answer.
Yeah. So we've got a number of people online here watching, and appreciate all of our guests that are engaged and watching today. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions for Craig, please post them now. I've got a few more questions that I wanted to ask, but before we wrap up, we're gonna take any of our Facebook Live visitors' questions as well. So if you have questions, post them now. Steve, thanks for posting a question. We'll get to your question here in just a minute. So if people really want to take a next step, like what is a good way to start thinking about and processing is this virtual assistant model the right fit for me? How would you coach someone?
So first thing is I would start up with what I call a give up list. We always have these to-do lists and they're exciting, all these things we want to do. No, start with the list of things you want to give up. Like it would be really nice if someone else would just manage my schedule for me. And for me, that's what I thought because I kind of sucked at it. So having that get done, and then just other little things like emails that got sent. I know we don't get too many emails a day, only 300 or 400, but having someone else just do that was a huge thing on my give up list. I wanted to give up going through a lot of emails and then being able to make sure that I could audit processes and systems and things like that. So if you're doing this today and you're starting, best advice I can give you is start with a give up list. I mean, what would you actually have them do if you had someone that would just do whatever it took to help you be successful? And you start just writing down those bullet points and come up with 10 things that you would give up today that they don't have to be done sitting in your office.
Yeah, I love it. I just saw a post the other day from Gary Vee, who's like, if you're doing something you don't like to do, stop doing it. There is no reason for you to continue to do that. And this is a great example of it. Figure out what those things are in your life that you don't want to do anymore. Write down and create a process on how to teach and train someone else to do it and what your standards are. And then figure out how to hire that person that does love to do that kind of a thing, right? So, okay.
Or just something you won't follow through with. I mean, some things I would love to do. I think it'd be awesome fun. However, I don't have the time to it. And I'm just not going to follow through on it.
Right.
But I still want the result. So I'll just hire someone else to do it.
So what's that big pile of things or big list of things that has been on your to-do list for 6, 9, 12 months that you're just never getting to? Like, okay, what of these things could I give to someone else and finally get it done? Yeah. Love that. Okay, so create a give up list. Identify the things that you don't like to do anymore or aren't getting done that you wish you had time to do. Create that list as step number 1. What's step number 2?
Yeah. Step number 2 is go through your time sucks. There's the things you're going to give up and the things that you might like doing, but they just suck your time.
I think I said time slots. Time sucks.
No, time sucks.
Yeah. So what's that vacuum that's just sucking your time up every day?
Yeah. And it might not be something on your give up list because you might enjoy doing it. You might. However, it's not the highest and best use of your time. So you've got that. You put that together and start to write out that job description, like what they would do for you. So I don't like managing my calendar. So I would hire someone that could manage my calendar. So they'd need to know, like, I use Google Calendar and I use a great system called Time Trade where they can schedule time with me. And that's where they'll go. And the person I'd prefer, they're trained in those things. So when they see that on a resume or they say, hey, I see you use Google Calendar. I love Google Calendar. Those little things are going to start to help. And then I also, when we're looking for talent, and we'll chat about this, I will search by some of those things to see if they're on resumes or job posting sites. So
tell us about Time Trade. What's Time Trade?
So it's just simply an online calendaring program where someone can schedule time with you. Back when I sold and I was working with buyers and they wanted to see houses, I did not love going ahead and playing let me call this person, and does this time work, and does this time work? So I just simply set up a Time Trade account where they could, they'd say, I want to see this house. I'd say, perfect, click there, schedule a time, let's go out and see that house. And it just made it fast and efficient. And then having a virtual assistant be able to go through and see that Time Trade, what the houses they want to see, and then call those agents and set up those showings for you. So that everything's set up, you just have to show up at the house.
Nice.
It's one of my favorite things right there.
Yeah.
And that's a time suck. I don't hate doing it.
I spend so much time managing my calendar. I mean, I love Google Calendar. I have all the technology in place, but I'm still the one scheduling appointments and managing that. And it's such a huge time suck for me.
If you just did that right there, Matt, if you just put someone else in charge of it.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so all right. So step number 1, create a give up list. Number 2, build the job description. around some of those tasks. And I'd imagine you'd probably want to group those in skill sets to some degree. But as you start to identify those and really prioritize the things that allow you to get your time back so that you can do the things that are most important, that generate the best return and give you the best energy, what's step number 3?
Okay, this is going to be evil, but you're going to go see what else other people have put on theirs. Because if you put Time Trade or Google Calendar on yours, and let's just say you put it on manila.craigslist.com, someone else is going to have it on there. And I can put a system we use like Mojo, which is a dialer system, and I could go type that into Craigslist, and someone else put a job description on there with Mojo. I'm going to look at what they're paying, so I know I can pay competitively. I'm going to go ahead and look at other things that I maybe didn't think of, like, oh, they should probably run this software and things like that. And I'm going to add to my job description based on what other people are doing. Plus, I'm running basically comps on salaries, so they can work for me at $3 an hour, or this guy at $4 an hour. If I want this job, I might have to pay $4 an hour.
Got it. So really get clear in your compensation structure based on really research and understanding what the market will support. Okay. And then what's my next step? Is it stepping into a training program? I know that you offer a great training program that really walks someone through from beginning to end, if I understand correctly, really how to do all these things and then really end up with a great trained virtual assistant. Is stepping into a training program like that, is that the next step?
If this part so far starts to confuse you, don't worry, I was there. But the next step is typically generating those candidates and filtering based on personality assessments, so you can start conducting Skype interviews, because you want to do video and voice to see if their internet can support it. And if just that right there gets complicated, we do a great group coaching called Virtual Leverage, where it's 8 hours of me going through and stepping you through the process, everything from building your budget to creating that give up list, to identifying their tech challenges, creating systems to hold them accountable, and decentralizing management. So you're not saying, okay, I don't know what my virtual assistant's doing. That's a question you should never ask. So that right there, that's a great next step if you're wanting to fast track this.
So how do people sign up? How do people sign up for that or get more information about that training?
If you go to mapscoaching.kw.com and you click on their group coaching, the very last one, because it starts with the V, Virtual Leverage, it's got all the details in there. In fact, we're getting ready to kick off our next round on October 12th. So October 12th, if you want,
next week,
join us. Next week. You're going to get time with us, and Raquel teaches it with me. So you get to actually talk to someone in the Philippines and ask their opinion and questions. And she's seen it all. You can't scare her. I've tried. So, but you're going to learn how to read personality assessments, because there's 2 or 3 things that through the DISC and through the KPA that we've learned make someone really, really good as a virtual assistant. And we spend a lot of time going in depth on what to look for. So, is this person going to show up tomorrow? Because sometimes they don't. So that's another big part of it. And then just working through your budget, your own personal budget, and building the system to hire them. Because Matt, if we're being honest, I don't know about you, but I don't have the time to go look at 200 or 300 resumes.
No, not. I mean, that alone just kind of terrifies me.
Yeah, we build a hiring system with you, so you can go ahead and get through 200 to 300 candidates and do it in a relatively short amount of time. So we build a filtering process.
Yeah, nice. So we've got some really good questions. Thank you, everyone, for participating and posting questions. Melanie asked, how can we learn more about your program? We'll be sure to post a link to the MAPS page where you can learn more about that. She asked, is this for Keller Williams agents only? Can someone sign up for the training if they're not with Keller Williams?
Yes, we've actually, on this last round of Virtual Leverage, we had 2 different home inspection companies go through it.
Nice.
And they wanted to create, I mean, if I were like right today, let's just say I was an electrician and I was an independent contractor, I would want someone to answer my phone, because sometimes if I'm just an electrician and work by myself, I don't have an office. I don't have time to answer my phone if I'm wiring a house. So we've actually helped professionals like that find a virtual assistant just for that one simple thing, answering the phone and then putting it in the schedule and then just some billing. Yeah. And you've got a virtual assistant doing it for you. So you can be that independent contractor. You can be that business owner, no matter what your size.
Yeah, so interesting. So frequently these episodes that we do, these shows we do, are so geared towards the real estate industry. And I told a bunch of my friends before we did this interview, I'm like, hey, look, this is applicable if you're a business owner. This is applicable if you are not a business owner and just want to get some of the stuff off your plate that you're currently doing, right? There's just so much you can do with this. Melanie, thanks for the question. So Steve Mickelson asked, this is a great question. Steve Mickelson asked if, you know, are you utilizing VAs at all for like inside sales associate or outside sales associate? So someone that's actually doing sales calls, whether they're inbound or outbound. Are you doing any of that and having success with it?
So it's different states have different laws, and it's kind of tricky in Utah how you'd have someone without a real estate license set an appointment for you. So you've got to be really, really careful of that. The one thing that we do, and we execute at a really high level, is when someone calls in and they call my mobile, and they're sitting out in front of a house, it's a sign call, or maybe they called in off an ad to look at a property, our virtual assistants will simply say, would you like to see the home? Because the receptionist can schedule an appointment for you, just like at the doctor's office. And they'll go ahead and say, well, you know, can I get the price? And I'll say, I don't have that right now. I can have someone call you back, but if it's a good price, did you want to see the home? And they'll go ahead and go through their script and actually bring in to where an appointment's set. And it's typically an in-the-office appointment with one of our buyer's agents. And then the buyer's agent will call back, pre-qualify it, confirm the appointment, and go. So, nice. And they will go ahead and help out with things like text messages, follow-ups, stuff like that, emails, making sure emails got checked. So things like that, which, believe it or not, I don't know about you guys, but I have set appointments through text message before, Facebook message. So, and sometimes it comes from my phone, but it's not always from me.
But it looks like it, right?
It looks like it. Yeah.
No, that's really brilliant. I mean, especially when we know the data that we know relative to the timeliness of your response. There's such strong evidence that when a consumer calls your company for the first time, especially in the real estate industry, if you don't answer live or respond within a matter of minutes, the likelihood of you capturing that business drops dramatically after that 5-minute mark, because in almost every scenario, that consumer is either online or driving through neighborhoods, and they're not just waiting for a return call. They're driving to the next house and then calling that agent, or looking at that next property online and calling and reaching out to that agent because they want their answer like now. The ability to have someone answer your phones live, even when you're out either in the field or being productive or focused on some sort of, really dollar productive activity, that is such a huge value and just genius. I think that's really neat that you're doing that. One last question here. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but where are you finding your VAs? And it sounds like primarily you talked about a number of different resources and places you do that, but you primarily focus on the Philippines for your VA. Is there any reason why you've identified the Philippines specifically to primarily, engage your people?
Oh, this is bad. I went ahead, and when Kevin and me were originally masterminding, he says, we could hire someone to do this, and just, someone in the Philippines. Guys, I wasn't that good at geography. I didn't even know where the Philippines was. And I just asked him, I said, so what are you thinking? Like, how would we do that? And he goes, I don't know, go on Craigslist. And so manila.craigslist.gov or .com, no, manila.craigslist.com is where we found our first 2 virtual assistants. We found Tina and we found Daphne there. And believe it or not, we hired Daphne to post Craigslist ads. So we found her on Craigslist. I mean, just makes sense, but that's been one of our best sources. And then the other one, because it is such a database heavy business, and I'm probably, no matter what, when they apply, I'm going to check them out on Facebook and just make sure they're a good person. I mean, all of us, we're doing that little bit of Facebook cyber stalking. You guys might even be doing that right now with Matt and me. Anyway, we go ahead and we'll type in virtual assistant in that little search, and you'll click the groups, and you'll see a lot of virtual assistant groups, and you can just go right in there. And sometimes they'll post their resumes. I had a great conversation yesterday with someone who were looking for someone that's going to do great Facebook marketing, and they were doing a lot of great Facebook marketing. And I said, what would it take for you to help me hire someone, or are you interested? And we've been having a great conversation, and I just found her on Facebook. So didn't
Awesome.
cost me anything. Didn't have to save it. I just went, type in virtual assistant, click on groups. There you go.
Yeah, awesome. Craig, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you. It just really a joy to visit with you about this and learn from someone that has had great experience. Do you want to end with any really bad mistake that you made, or some sort of funny experience that you had? Anything to share?
Oh my gosh.
Parting remarks?
So, well, I will share this. One of the coolest things I have ever gotten to do was go to the Philippines and actually spend time with my virtual assistants. I've gone twice now. We went ahead and we did a Red Day there. That was their idea. They saw what we were doing here. They thought it was really cool. So we went to
people who aren't familiar with Red Day, what's Red Day?
Red Day is the day where Keller Williams puts on different, basically, service projects and goes around and gives back to the community.
Nice.
So they saw that we were doing that. And Sheena, who she's my big, really cool altruist, she went ahead and said, hey, can we do that here? And we're going to go to this place called the House of Hope. And there's a bunch of kids with cancer there where they stay near the hospital when they're getting treatment. And we got to go to the House of Hope. And I dressed up like Batman. And, you know, when you take off the mask and you're the white guy, they think you're Batman. So it was a really cool experience to have and to be able to share in that. And then just, we've got a basketball team in the Philippines that we promote. It's kids living in a province, and they've got cool jerseys.
You sponsor
I do.
The Craig Goodliff team sponsors a basketball team in the Philippines. I love it.
Yeah, it's the Good Life group, and we call it Sharing the Good Life. So it's kind of a fun opportunity we've had to give back. But that right there, I mean, if I were to share something with you, the difference that's made has been just monumental. And having people message me saying, I love my job. I make more money than I've ever made. I have more savings than I've ever had in my entire life. Wow. I've got someone that works for me that their entire life, they've not been able to keep a job longer than 6 months. And they're close to 2.5 years with me. And they tell me every single day how much they love their job. And I mean, this is someone who yesterday left at 5:30 when we're off work and just came back to see if I needed anything else because we were doing the career night at 8 o'clock to check on me. And it's just those people that really, really care. That's hard to find no matter where you're at. And it's pretty common with our team members. So we've been very blessed and fortunate.
Very cool. Very cool. You just got a great comment from one of our team leaders in South Africa. What Wayne just said, great session. So Craig, you're having an impact all over the world today. So appreciate all that you're doing. Not just the Philippines, but South Africa as well. So
hey, thank you very much.
Yeah, very, very cool. Just final, where can people connect with you offline if they have further questions or want to engage with you on social media?
Add me on Facebook. I'm pretty good about that. It's usually like, you know, a good 70% of the time it's me and not someone else signed into my Facebook. However, if you don't get a reply and you send me a message, someone else is signed into my Facebook. Just going to tell you. So they're helping me manage. And I know that none of you get weird Facebook messages, only me, but they're helping me kind of filter that content. But Facebook is going to be the easiest way to get me. Send me a message if you have questions, you want to know more about virtual leverage, or you're having an experience, you want someone to chat through with you. I'm here. Reach out.
Awesome. Will the real Craig Goodliff stand up, please? Right?
Yeah,
who am I getting an answer from? That's awesome. Craig, thank you so much for your time. Guys, that's our episode today for Real Insights Live. Again, appreciate our guest, Craig Goodliff, and the Good Life team and all that he's doing. Make sure you're checking him out on Facebook and participating with him. I highly, highly encourage you to get signed up for his MAPS coaching event. You can find a reproduction of this live cast on our YouTube channel as well, kwutah.tv. Please, if you have any comments or questions, post them below. We'd love to engage with you over the next several hours and days. If you have any input relative to the session, and certainly we will post links for all the things that we referenced today. Just a quick reminder about upcoming events with Business by the Book. Holly Prescott, who we're flying into Salt Lake City, is just phenomenal. And spending the day with her is going to be a really great use of your time. And then Business Planning Clinic on November 8th for me here in Salt Lake. And I'll also be teaching it in St. George on November 6th. A couple really cool social media events that we have coming up with the Real Insights Live interviews. I've got a panel of different people, a series of interviews just like this, of people that have exceeded at a really high level using social media to build their businesses. More primarily around real estate, so social media to build their real estate businesses. They're going to be phenomenal. In addition to that, we've got a really talented guy that has had just a great track record of flipping homes in this market right now and doing really well. He also is a professional speaker, and that's coming up in the next handful of weeks. So make sure you follow us along. Thank you for joining us today. Peace, love, productivity, and have a phenomenal day.